I don't know if you guys do this in maths class over there.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
I didn't want you to be confused. What's good? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of The Newest Olympian. My name is Mike Schubert. I'm the titular Newest Olympian. I'm a 32-year-old man who never read the Percy Jackson books as a kid. I read them as an adult because I was determining if it was a book series that society has been sleeping on. I said yes, and now I'm seeing if society has also been sleeping on the Heroes of Olympus books, which would be uncomfortable. Those books are very long, but we are here for another episode to continue our coverage, and I am not on this journey alone. I'm joined by a very special guest, someone who has been a long time coming on this podcast, and I'm very excited to have them on. You might know them from the work that we've done together on 20 to Midnight, or her incredible voiceover work in wonderful podcasts such as Wooden Overcoats, or the new sensation sweeping the internet nations, Tiny Angry Witch. It's Beth Eyre. Beth, how's it going?
Mike, hi. I'm really good, thank you. I'm so excited to be here at last. I'm really looking forward to it.
I'm so stoked as well. I wanted to have you on ever since I did the TNO show in London when I didn't even know that you were reading the books, and then you were in attendance, and it was a lovely, fun time, and we had a good time at the show, and good time hanging afterwards, and then hanging out the next day, and I'm glad that we can finally make this happen. The schedules have aligned, the stars have aligned, and you're here to break down the Son of Neptune.
Awesome.
I'm so stoked. Why don't you tell everyone your history with the Percy Jackson books, and then also the Heroes of Olympus books before we get into these two chapters?
Yeah, absolutely. So I never read the Percy Jackson books as a kid. Imagine that.
Whoa.
I know,
way.
right? I was really into fantasy. I read a lot of Tolkien books, a lot of Lord of the Rings type stuff, and Philip Pullman books, but I completely missed these. I think partly going to university at the wrong time, but they were on my radar. I was really aware of them. And then through meeting you, I was like, brilliant, I have an excuse to actually read these for the first time. So I started reading the first series last year or maybe the year before, not sure anymore, but it feels a bit like last year, maybe it was the year before, and I had such a great time listening to TNO. Then I thought, so am I going to commit to reading these books the rest of time so I can keep up the podcast? And I absolutely am. I'm very happy about that. I'm having a great time doing that.
Amazing. Yeah, I think we did this fun thing when we started working together on 20 to Midnight, the D&D stream that we do, that you started listening to TNO and I started listening to Wooden Overcoats, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. So I'm very excited to cover these. There's some chunky chapters, so I think we should just get right into these two Percy chapters.
Awesome.
Chapter 13 is called Percy, and we will, of course, retitle it by the end for a new fun name. But where we last left our heroes, Frank Zhang just got claimed by Mars as his son, which is wild and dramatic and does not make Percy happy. Are you not happy about that? I thought it was very cool.
It is. I feel like Frank is not happy about it.
Correct.
And I think that's super sweet.
Yeah.
But no, it's really fun. It's really fun. I did not see it coming. Did you see it coming?
I did see it coming. It was funny because it started as just like a process of elimination type guess of just like, well, he needs to have a god as a dad. Mm-hmm. And there's only a certain few that can work, and there's only a certain few that we actually haven't really seen a child of. So I kind of saw it coming, but not necessarily in that way. And I'm very excited about how it's going to develop.
It's very exciting.
Now, before we get into anything, I did just write in my notes in all caps before, I guess sometime in between doing the last episode recording and then doing this episode, I just wrote my notes in all caps. Reyna is going to end up with Leo in all caps. And it's just a prediction I'm throwing out there. And I don't know exactly what sparked it. It might be that I was doing the production work on the episode where they fight Keone, and Leo was all, oh man, I can't believe I liked her. And then I was trying to think like, who will Leo actually end up with? And I think it could be fun if he ends up with Reyna. It might be weird because we don't know what's going on with Reyna and Reyson, but clearly there's something going on there. I don't know if Leo's just going to feel weird about dating Jason's ex ? But if I had to just make a wild, bold, out of nowhere prediction, I'm just going to throw that out there just because since she is so serious and straight-laced and he is so goofball Jones, I feel like they could be a fun opposites attract sort of pairing.
Oh, that's exciting. Okay, let's see.
We will see. Now, this chapter begins with, quote, Percy slept like a Medusa victim, which is to say, like a rock. And I gotta live in a world where Rick just wrote the first thing, and then some editor was like, you should probably explain the joke. Because it just feels like that second part of the sentence is not necessary. Obviously, like, maybe because it's a kid's book, they're like, you have to clarify, but I don't know. This just feels like someone telling him, you gotta add this.
Yeah, I feel like we're all on board by this point, especially with the Gorgons in the first chapters, but...
That's true.
This is nice and clear for everyone.
Right. So it is the first time that Percy has slept in a safe and comfortable bed since he cannot remember. And of course, Percy had dreams, but they were all blurs, which is very convenient for us for the plot so that Percy doesn't know too much of what's happening.
Absolutely. Exciting dream time, though.
I know, it's been a minute. The first blurry dream is that of a fawn, in quotation marks, running up to Percy, and Percy saying, "Oh, sorry, I don't have any change," but it's not a fawn. It's a fawn lobster. It's Grover. It is Grover, our good satyr friend. G-Man tells Percy to stay put as they are en route to finding him, and they believe that Tyson is the closest to him. So this is where they've been the whole time, explaining why they weren't in the last book. And the prospect of Grover and Tyson showing up at the end of this book, most likely, is very exciting to me.
It's so exciting to be hearing from all our old friends. But the stay put thing, you're just like, he's just got assigned on a quest. What?
The timing couldn't be worse or more dramatic, but also perfect. But yes, I literally wrote my notes. So funny for him to say stay put just as they are about to leave. It is perfect work from Chiron for plot managing purposes or really from Rick Riordan. Just, he knows what he's doing. He's crafting. It's like when Gabriel Urbina, our friend, scripts things and it makes it so it just like destroys your heart and you start crying. Like Rick knows what he's doing. He's making the most anxiety-inducing situation possible, but it makes it so fun. Now, the next dream blur is Annabeth running alongside him and reaching out her hand while saying that they couldn't see him for months on end, but now they can. And this makes Percy remember that Juno said he'd been slumbering for months, but is now awake. I'm wondering if the slumbering is literal or if it was figurative or exactly what the time difference between the start of The Lost Hero and the start of The Son of Neptune was. It would be fun if we get like the full timeline, but yeah, I wonder what's afoot here.
Yeah, absolutely, because he's missing months, and what is that like? It feels very, I don't know, it feels very Zelda to just be in stasis, sort of waiting to go.
Feels very Zelda, feels very Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, which is when Sora's in like a basically like freezing, sleeping coma sort of thing, and then they use his memories to do stuff. I mean, look, memories. We're getting more connections between Kingdom Hearts and Percy Jackson. It's just all over the place. Percy asks Annabeth, "Are you real?" And he gets supremely nervous because he wants it to be true so badly. And I think that this is very sweet, and it made me a little emotional. She also tells him to stay put because Tyson's job of finding him will be made easier. And I'm thinking, okay, Tyson, Cyclops, son of Poseidon, maybe it's because Percy's close to a coast. Perhaps that's why he's the closest. And it does make me think that if they do go on this quest, which I feel like at this point when I was reading that they're gonna do, I don't see Percy being like, "Later, dudes," and just chilling back, and then every third narration cycle is him being like, "So I was at camp, just waiting for Tyson." So if they're going to Alaska, Alaska's got a lot of water around it. I feel like Tyson's probably traveling by water, so I think it'll be okay. And my prediction here, another bold just like swing, is I feel like Tyson will join in Alaska at like a climactic battle moment when it appears that all hope is lost. They're fighting this big bad who we come to learn over the course of these 2 chapters, and it's not going well. And then Tyson comes in with a big old fist or he throws something. Like I just could see that being the entrance of Tyson, and I think it would be very cool.
Awesome. No comment.
Yeah, the trapdoor intact. We've got one across the pond and it's still working, but it's not activated. So then Percy sees a vision that is vaguely described by the narrator, but it is definitely Leo building the Argo 2. So glad to know that that is progressing. And then he sees an image that is definitely a flashback of Percy's fight with Ares from The Lightning Thief. And then he has a vision of Gia where he's seeing her face in the field of Mars. And then she, in her sleepy voice creepiness, goes, quote, "So this is the demigod who destroyed my son Kronos. You don't look like much, Percy Jackson, but you're valuable to me. Come north, meet Alcyonus? Alcyonus? Do you know how to pronounce this one?"
I really don't. I was hoping you did.
I would feel like the more common thing people would say is like Alcyonius, but if that's the Roman name, like I'm so used to taking Latin in high school and C's are hard C's, at least what my Latin professors told me, is that you would say like Alcyonius, but I can ask Dr. Moy in the future. I'll go with Alcyonius for now, because when I did a hard C with Enceladus, people were like, no. So I'll go with Alcyonius and people can correct me. Let's just see if Google has the thing. Sometimes they have the answer. Alcyonius, ? Pronunciation. All right, it's like one of those how to pronounce, and I never trust those.
Yeah,
this one's rated 4 out of 5, though. Let's see.
Let's see what it says.
They're saying Alcyonius. I'm guessing that would be the accepted thing, but I'll figure it out. So we'll call him Alcyonius for this episode, and we'll see how it goes in the future. Gia continues, Juno can play her little games with Greeks and Romans, but in the end, you will be my pawn. You'll be the key to the gods' defeat. And I'm thinking, yeah, right, loser. This is not what Percy's going to do. I couldn't think of like an exact example, but this does feel like this is sometimes a classic villain thing, where they intentionally try to bring the hero along in hopes that they will turn, but then actually that brings the hero closer to defeating them. I couldn't remember if this was something from a different media, or was I just thinking of them like kind of doing this with Jason?
Yeah, sort of luring someone in thinking they're going to turn your side, and of course they won't. Yeah, yeah. I think that's a thing.
It feels like a thing. I don't know if there's like a name for it, but whatever it is, I think that's going to happen. Because if anyone's going to be good and not take over the world, I trust my friend Percy Jackson. I think he's going to be okay. Now the dream shifts to where Percy is in a larger version of Camp Jupiter's Principia, and this one is a snowy version. The floor is littered with skeletons of Roman fighters and their imperial gold weapons, and sitting across the room is a large, shadowy figure with gold and silver skin like he's an automaton like Raina's dogs. And I have to be honest, this is the first time that I really recognized that the dogs are like fully robot dogs and not just like a dog made of silver and a dog made of gold. Like I was imagining like the Silver Surfer but a dog, and then I guess the Gold Surfer but a dog. And then when they said automaton, I was like, yeah, that makes way more sense.
But it is quite strange and awesome.
Yeah.
We've not seen this before.
No,
Cool.
I don't know. And I don't think that this guy is a robot. I think he just has metallic skin. So maybe he is more like the Silver Surfer, like I was imagining the dog. I'm intrigued to know more about him. And I'm especially intrigued to know more about him as we do learn a little bit more about him in the chapters, because I feel like his description doesn't necessarily make sense with his skin being metallic. We can get into it when it's described, but like even this vibe, and I don't know if the vibe is because it's Alaska or because of him. I don't know if they end up even saying his powers, but like just in general, like metal guy being in Ice Town doesn't feel like, yeah, that makes sense. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Now, behind him are a bunch of ruined emblems, tattered banners, and a large golden eagle on an iron staff. So this is the guy we're after. He's got the thing we're after, and we're learning right away. This is basically the mini boss of this book. He feels like this book's version of, I guess the last book had two, because you've got enchiladas and then also Porphyrion. So I guess he feels like this book's Porphyrion in that he is the giant. It just seems like this is the guy we're fighting in chapter 52 out of 58 or whatever. Now this giant bellows, "This will be fun, Son of Neptune. It's been eons since I broke a demigod of your caliber. I await you atop the ice." So I'm guessing at this point, okay, this feels like Alcyonius, but I'm excited about this because now this is the second giant who's like talking trash, excited to fight.
They're really fun.
Yes. I think they're very compelling villains because they're just supremely confident. We had this with Porphyrion. We have this now with Alcyonius. I think it's going to be really fun fighting these guys for the next 3 2/3 books. Percy wakes up shivering, which is different than his trademark thing where normally it says Percy woke up bolt upright. So a slight different Percy waking effect. And the most figuratively chilling part of the dream is not the golden giant that he saw, but it's the dirt woman calling him a pawn. And narrator Percy about this says, quote, "Percy didn't play chess, but he was pretty sure that being a pawn was bad. They died a lot. And as someone that plays a lot of chess, you are correct, but also Percy, pawns can turn into queens when they get to the other side of the board. So if she thinks you are her pawn and then you get all the way, then you become the queen, then you destroy her."
Oh, I like that. That's really good. What a great metaphor.
Look, I do what I can, and I was literally playing chess in between reading this chapter online. I love playing some online chess, and I was happy to do it, and it was funny that it came up, because I was playing chess before reading this, and then I was like, and then of course I had to check the games that I was playing, because I have these like long daily games going with my friends who are way better than me at chess, so I like pretty much always lose now when I'm playing chess, but if I'm ever like close to beating my friends who are really good, I'm like, oh, nice, cool.
That's awesome. I suck at chess, but I think playing with better people must be good for kind of developing.
Definitely, because you're always like playing to the skill above you. And I feel like I did this with sports. Like when I played tennis, like I would always play up if I was playing someone better than me. And you kind of like second guess yourself and play down. You get nervous and cautious if you're playing someone that's not as good as you. But what I would say, if you do genuinely want to learn chess, or anyone listening wants to, just go to chess.com and start doing their puzzles. Because with puzzles, you can do like 5 a day, and then they progressively get harder or they get easier if you start like messing some up. And I did that when I got really into playing chess over the course of COVID lockdown, like April 2020 to April 2021. I did the puzzles every single day and raised my puzzle rating. I think they start you at like either 500 or 1,000, and then I got myself up to 2,000. And it's a great way to learn. And there's a lot of learning tools on chess.com. So if you want to get into it, I'd recommend it. But also,
awesome.
You can do other things with your time. Anyway, Percy Jackson. Percy is even a bit worried about some of the quote-unquote nicer parts of his dreams, like that G-Man fellow that he saw. He wonders if that is the person that's on the other end of his empathy link. So Percy is doing a pretty good job of piecing together the new information that he's learning with the tiny little bits of memory that still remain. He's very on top of it.
Yeah, I feel like he's kind of making progress a little bit faster than Jason did, maybe?
He's doing a lot better than Jason. And I don't know if it is because of Percy individually, or if it's because Hera left more things in there, or if it's just because we know Percy and writing-wise, it's a little different. Yeah, because like I think that's an interesting thing is I wonder if, even if I reread The Lost Hero now, or if I reread The Lost Hero at the end of these 5 books when I know more about Jason, I wonder if me reading it, more of those hints, I would be doing more of the like, oh, because I feel like anytime anything happens here with Percy, we're like, oh, but yeah, we know 5 books worth of information about Percy Jackson.
And nothing about Jason,
exactly, like the slightest thing is mentioned, like, I don't know, it could even be a thing where Percy was like getting food at the cafeteria and it was like, there was a bunch of Jell-O and Percy picked the blue one. For some reason, he wanted the blue Jell-O. And we're all like, oh. I guess he did that with the Coke, right? The Coke was blue at the cafeteria here. And he was like, I don't know why I like this, but I like this.
He's like, I like this.
Yeah, it's such a minor thing that doesn't mean anything. But us reading it, we're like, oh my God, the thing. So maybe it's just because we know more. But I agree with you. My first instinct was like, wow, he's way better at this than Jason. Now, Percy's also curious about this Tyson fellow and the fact that Annabeth was insistent on him not changing locations. So Percy, awake now, sees Dakota putting on a toga and other people rushing around to get ready. Percy asks, hoping that the answer is yes, if breakfast time is upon them, and Frank, who's in the bunk underneath Percy, which makes me very happy that they are a bunk bed duo. I thought it was so great.
Yeah, that's awesome, although Frank has the worst bunk, clearly.
Oh, you're a top bunk person.
For sure. Are you not?
No, I like bottom bunk because I like when I sleep, I get hot very easily, and I feel like being lower to the ground is cooler. Why do you prefer top bunk?
I just don't like the idea of someone being above you.
Ooh,
I don't know.
Safety risk. But then I guess you're at a falling risk, are you not?
You don't really fall though, do you? When you get to use the ladder, so much more fun.
I think there's pros and cons. I like bottom because it's cooler. You do get a bit of a noise concern where like if the person above you like moves a lot in their sleep, you get the classic like creak, 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 creak.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've never thought about being the risk of the bed just like falling down on you. And now I will forever worry about that if I sleep in a bottom bunk. But as a 32-year-old man, I'm not doing a lot of bunk bed sleeping these days.
No. Me neither, really. It doesn't come up that much.
So Frank informs Percy that they will have a quick breakfast followed by a Senate meeting. And I remembered, oh, right, Mars told them you got to have a meeting to figure out who's going on this quest. Percy asks if he should wear his bed sheets, and Frank chuckles and relays that togas are only for the senators, of which there are 10 who are elected yearly, and all of them must be at least 5-year veterans of the camp. Percy asks, okay, then why are we invited to the meeting? And Frank goes, 'cause of the quest? Mm-hmm. And he then continues to describe it in a tone like he's worried that Percy might back out. But he says that Percy and Hazel should attend, quote, I mean, if you're willing, ... And Percy doesn't think that this is an intentional guilt trip, but he does feel bad for Frank, and he feels like he's in a tough situation. He was claimed by the god of war, which he didn't want, and he's being thrust into this. And I just had a quick question. I wrote in my notes, why is Hazel there? Just because she's in contention? Mars didn't say that she had to be one of the three. Frank didn't say anything about picking her, right?
I had the same point, and I was going to ask you at the beginning of the chapter who you understood was on the quest, because I thought it was clear that Frank is on the quest, Percy's on the quest, but there's one more spot, and we know that they're close.
Yes,
but
that's what I thought too, and it comes up a couple of different times in this chapter where it's like, yeah, we picked these three, and Hazel's in the team. I went back to read it multiple times. I was like, am I losing my mind? He didn't pick Hazel yet. Like, I guess it's just understood by everyone, or maybe there was like a slight time jump because we did go straight from Mars saying do the quest to Percy is asleep.
Being asleep,
so I guess there was a whole couple of hours in between. But yeah, I was very confused. I didn't think that he actually chose Hazel, so I'm glad that you had a similar confusion.
Absolutely.
And I guess we're all just supposed to like believe it, but I was thinking that they were going to get to the Senate meeting and then he was going to want to pick Hazel and it was going to be more of a dramatic discussion. There's other drama that comes up instead, but I was fully anticipating that going into this meeting. So when they kind of fast forwarded to be like, oh yeah, he's already picked Hazel, I was like, whoa, wait, hold on. Has he? Did I miss this? I'm reading the same book, right?
I thought other people were going to put themselves forward. There's going to be like a whole thing.
Yeah, Octavian's going to make a big deal. Like, I thought that was going to be a thing of everyone trying to get up there. Yeah, but okay. So he's picked Hazel. I was confused. Glad we're on the same page. Percy is feeling good about how well the three of them work together as a team in the war games. And he also is feeling good about them more sentimentally because they welcomed him in like family almost immediately. On the other hand, Percy is feeling bad about some stuff because the quest is from Mars and he doesn't like him. He just knows I don't like this guy. And his dream visitors also said stay put multiple times, every time using the phrasing of stay put. And that means that much like Natalie Imbruglia, he's torn. So he doesn't know what, okay, I'm glad. This is one of those like, I love that song, but I don't know if anyone knows the artist of it. Because was she a one-hit wonder? I don't know any other Natalie Imbruglia songs. I just know Torn.
I'm not sure I do either, actually. Yeah. No, that is the one that springs to mind.
If anyone is confused, it's the God, that song slaps. God. Percy gets ready. The whole time he's thinking about Annabeth and how if he just stayed here, he could get his old life back. So he is clearly flip-flopping. Like a pancake. Good thing he's at breakfast. So he's at breakfast, and then he hears everyone mumbling around him, and much like Tupac, all eyes are on him. He overhears, quote, 2 gods in one day. And then he hears someone else say, un-Roman fighting. And then he hears a third go, water cannon up my nose.
I love this guy. There are some great one-liners in this chapter.
This chapter has a lot of good one-liners, but yes, water up my nose guy, very fun. I love a rule of thirds joke from Uncle Rick. This felt like Rick wrote this chapter after taking an improv class, and I will get into the fundamentals of it as it continues, but yes, this initial line was very funny. So narrator Percy then says, quote, he was too hungry to care. He filled up on pancakes, eggs, bacon, waffles, apples, and several glasses of orange juice. He probably would have eaten more, but Reyna announced that the Senate would now convene in the city, and all the folks in togas got up to leave. And I've never related more. If anyone's ever seen me at a breakfast buffet, you know I will eat until something makes me stop eating, whether that's the buffet is closed or we need to leave. I can put down some serious food when it comes to breakfast, especially if it's free unlimited food in a cafeteria situation. Oh my good golly gosh.
This is a great breakfast list.
Yes. Okay. I mean, I was going to say, this is very like American breakfast. Were you upset that there was no beans and black pudding and roasted tomatoes?
No.
Oh, you're not a black pudding fan.
Oh, I'm vegetarian.
Oh,
but
okay.
I can get on board with the general idea of bacon at breakfast. I just think it's very wholesome to see him eating all the cool stuff.
Yeah. When you are reading this as a Brit, did you feel like, oh, because if there was a book where they were in London and it was like he had beans and toast, I would have been like, oh, so classic UK. Like, did this reek of American breakfast to you, or is it just like, oh, that sounds like a nice breakfast?
I think the waffles and pancakes and bacon maybe a little bit. The apples, I was a bit like,
yes,
something healthy. That's nice.
It is.
I guess.
And I'm not. Maybe this is me. Maybe I'm like slightly allergic to apples and I don't recognize it. But I feel like apples, if I eat them in the morning, it doesn't sit well in my stomach. This also happens if I drink apple juice just like straight up. That also could be because apple juice has loads of sugar in it, and maybe that's just like my stomach being like, no, thank you. But apples at breakfast to me, I thought was interesting. To me, it doesn't scream like a breakfast food. More traditional, but I guess he has a glass of orange juice. I would think would be like oranges, seems breakfasty, like melon of sorts, like cantaloupe or cantaloupe's less cool little sister, honeydew. Even grapes, but apples
berries, blueberries.
Right. Yeah, strawberry. Like apples feels like the thing that you grab to go from the breakfast buffet after breakfast has ended. But I guess if you are at a continental breakfast, the most common things are apples and oranges and bananas. But I just feel like that's because they're the most travel-friendly fruit to bring, because you can just eat it with one hand and then toss away the core.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, we're aligned. When I saw apples, I was like, apples,
I feel like he's just grabbing everything he can.
A smart play. Now, Vitellius pops up near our team and says, Bona Fortuna, you three. Ah, Senate meetings. I remember the one when Caesar was assassinated. Why, the amount of blood on his toga. I'm all in on Vitellius. He's just
so
this
great.
book. Yeah, good. Okay, I'm glad. He's just this book's Coach Hedge, but I love Coach Hedge, and I'm all in on Vitellius here, where he's like the older guy that kind of is annoying, but is also very endearing in the way he's annoying. And I love that Frank stops him short and just says, thanks, Vitellius. We should get going.
He does not need any more foreboding and anxiety about this meeting.
It's so fun. I love Vitellius. I need Vitellius and Coach Hedge to meet. Oh my goodness. It would be so wonderful.
I am missing Coach Hedge.
That's another thing, is Vitellius is making me feel okay in that we're getting Coach Hedge vibes. And same thing,
Yeah.
I'm missing Coach Hedge as well. Reyna and Octavian lead the group of senators. They lead our team, and also Nico D'Angelo to this meeting. So Nico still finding a way to show up. Nico's wearing a black toga because, of course, and he's chatting with Gwen, who narrator Percy describes as, quote, looked a little pale, but surprisingly good considering she'd been dead the night before.
Right.
Uncle Rick is absolutely in his bag when Percy's the narrator. Like, he's just cooking with gas when Percy narrates.
He really is, and it feels kind of great to have Percy back. It's great. It's very good.
Yeah. I think this is a common thing among people reading these books, especially people like me, you, and my friend Steven, who are all reading these now and reading them older, where I was talking with Steven yesterday about this chapter, and he texted me and he said, I didn't realize how much I missed Percy until I was reading Percy chapters again. And this is how I feel too. And I think it makes sense, because when I was reading The Lost Hero, I was like, what's wrong with The Lost Hero, guys? This book's fun.
It's great.
And now I'm reading this book and I'm like, okay, yeah. Like, this is not to diss The Lost Hero, but like, this is way better.
It's just a bit extra, isn't it? It's just a little bit more.
And like, sure, it's the nostalgia kick of it, but just, yeah, Rick is just so good when Percy's the narrator, and it makes me really excited to get to, and maybe there's not one, but it makes me excited for if there will be a future Percy is only the narrator book. I don't know if that would be Trials of Apollo. I don't know if that would be these new books, the new trilogy that they're writing with Chalice of the Gods, that I believe takes place between Heroes of Olympus and Trials of Apollo, and I'm not sure, but no one tell me, I don't know anything, no one tell me anything, but whenever there's another book where it's just Percy narrating, I'll be very happy. Not that I don't like the other narrators, but I just feel like after doing 5 books of it, Rick knows exactly how to be amazing as Percy as the narrator. It's just so fun. He's just so fun. Nico waves at Percy and then resumes his conversation, making Percy feel almost 100% certain that Nico is avoiding him.
What is with Nico?
I know. Gosh, it's such a mystery. I love it. It's so fun. Now, many senators are fidgeting with their togas, making Percy feel glad that he's in his, quote, normal purple shirt and jeans, and it just feels so wrong. It just feels so wrong for him to be in the different color shirt. Percy asks how ancient Romans could move in togas. Hazel explains that they were only for formal events. They're kind of like tuxedos. And then Hazel checks to make sure that Percy didn't bring any weapons. And Percy, who is incapable of not having a weapon in his pocket at all times, asks, why? Are we not supposed to? It's so funny. So funny. She says that weapons are forbidden past the Pomeranian Line, which of course autocorrect on my notes app tried to change to the Pomeranian Line.
That's
which
exactly
is
what I read the first time. I was like, what?
It's a bunch of expensive purebred dogs. Thankfully, Percy immediately asks, what's that? And Frank answers that it is the city limits, and it's a safe zone where legions cannot pass. No weapons can go past so that meetings don't get bloody. And Percy asks, oh, like Caesar's assassination? And Frank confirms and adds, don't worry, nothing like that has happened in months. And Percy hopes that's a joke. And I'm wondering, is it a joke? Because he didn't tell us the tone. So it could be Frank making a very funny joke if it's a joke, or it could be Frank saying something that is very unintentionally scary.
Yep, just straight up. Could be.
Now, as they approach the city, Percy appreciates its beauty, and then Percy can tell that they've reached the city limits as everyone slows down near a marble statue of a muscular man with curly hair, no arms, and a grumpy expression. He's just a bust. And he orders the campers to form a single file line and present their IDs. And I'm thinking, oh no, we're back at the TSA pre-check vibes of Easy Death from the Underworld and the Lightning Thief. And Percy then sees that the city is aligned with similar busts all around its border, and the IDs are the tattoos. We learn also from just a description of narrator Percy that cohort 3 has a senator named Hank who is apparently wearing cool shoes because this statue complements his cool shoes. The statue then stops Percy. Hazel addresses him as Terminus and introduces him to Percy and Percy to him, identifying him as the god of boundaries. And that would make sense, especially given the name Terminus. We can all guess exactly what that kind of means. The end, the boundary. And he is okay with Percy's Probatio necklace as an ID, but he's not okay with the weapon in his pocket. So I'm wondering, okay, what's going to happen? Like, is it going to vanish out of there? And is this going to be a whole dramatic situation? But Terminus tells Percy to leave it on a tray and calls over his assistant, a 6-year-old girl named Julia.
I love Julia.
She's my new favorite character in the whole series. She plays a hiding game with Terminus where she stands behind him and stuff out of his peripheral vision. Adorable. Then she holds out a tray that has knives, a corkscrew, an oversized container of suntan lotion, and a water bottle. So yes, this is a TSA pre-check airport security joke from Rick Riordan. I love it. Terminus says that Julia is a professional, so no need for Percy to worry. He can get his weapon on the way out. And I'm thinking again, is it going to stay? And Julia sounds out the word professional, like she's been learning it and practicing it. She's so cute. And this especially tugged at my heartstrings because I am now the proud father of an adorable little baby girl. And we recently took her on a little Halloween adventure. We're recording this on November 1st. And we took her on a little pumpkin patch Halloween adventure in the city of New York. And it was so fun and cute. And she got a pumpkin, which of course she tried to eat. But the pumpkin is as big as her head, so that didn't work out. But it was very fun and adorable. So to then go home that night and read about a tiny little 6-year-old girl, I was like, I can't wait till she's 6 and she plays hide and seek with me.
Oh, so cute.
So then this guy lays down some rules for Percy. And I just wrote, I like this guy. Like, he's fun. He's to the point. He's not being like overly grouchy or anything. He then tries to point something out to Percy. And Percy has to remind Terminus, I can't see where you're pointing. You have no hands. And he then gets a little upset and responds, a smart aleck, eh? Well, Mr. Rule Flouter, right down there in the forum. Julia, point for me, please. And after this, I was like, I like this guy a lot. He's really fun. I'm a big fan of Terminus. She points to the general store, and Terminus explains that Percy needs to get a tape measure so that he can make his pants 1 inch above his ankles, which, fashion-wise, do not do that. That is too high. Depending on the type of pants, you want to usually have it, like, meet your ankles. An inch above? That is a wild look unless you're rocking, like, cropped pants, like an intentionally, like, short and baggy sort of look like Gen Z folks enjoy these days. But an inch above your ankle, I was just, from a fashion perspective, I was appalled. Too high. Hazel, much like Frank talking to Vitellius, goes, thank you, Terminus, we need to get going. And they're just going to ignore this guy, which feels good since he has no idea how to properly tailor pants. He lets them pass, but he calls out for Hazel to only walk on the right side of the road and to move a rock 2 inches to the left because it's out of place. Hazel does. Percy asks if this guy's always like this, and she says no, because he's normally more obsessive compulsive. And I will be honest, I do not know much about obsessive compulsive tendencies, OCD. I don't know that. So I don't know if these are like legit things. I know OCD usually gets misrepresented in media. Like, I think the stereotypical thing is that it's like the whole like, oh, I gotta, touch my pockets 3 times before I leave a room. And I just personally have like never met someone with an actual case of OCD or learned about it. So for me, I need to learn more. If people want to email in, I'm happy to learn more, or I can look up stuff. I don't know if you know anything about obsessive compulsive disorder.
I've known a couple of people with it. I think everybody's different and I don't know an enormous about. I felt in a way that this was a little bit of a sort of slightly of its time portrayal of sort of somebody just being very finicky about certain things, but also I think in a way we've sort of got past that a little bit with portrayals of OCD, but also this is a finicky guy who is very strict about things, and I feel like that's what they're reacting to. Right.
I was reading this and I was wondering the same thing. Is this a dated sort of thing of like, this guy's just particular as opposed to OCD? Just the classic thing, like, I feel like all of the people our parents' age love to just say like, oh, I'm so OCD because I put the silverware in the drawer. It's like, no, that's where the silverware goes. So yeah, again, anyone who knows more about this, feel free to shoot an email to the TNO Gmail because I would love to learn more. Frank explains that Terminus inhabits each boundary stone around the city. He's the last line of defense. And Hazel says that he's not so bad, but he recommends staying on his good side. Otherwise, he'll punish you by making you measure blades of grass, which does not feel like a fun punishment. Percy asks about Julia. Hazel smiles and calls her a cutie, which is accurate, and she explains that her parents live in the city. And I'm just imagining, I don't know if you've played Baldur's Gate 3, but I'm just imagining Arabella from Baldur's Gate 3. She's this like tiny little girl who you have to like save along and has like some powers and stuff. And I'm just imagining her as Julia. She is a tiefling, so she's got horns. So maybe it's just like a hornless version of Arabella is what's in my brain. So they get near the forum, and Percy is shocked to see so many people, including college-aged kids, older couples, babies, and in general, just normal city hustle and bustle. Percy checks that everyone here is a demigod, and Hazel says that yes, they are either demigods or the descendants of demigods, and repeats that this is a good place to safely raise a family. And I think this is a really fun addition to the lore. I think it just makes an interesting wrinkle for our characters, and it's just this new thing of, do they keep fighting off monsters in the world, or do they kind of take not necessarily the easy way out, but like the safe route of, do we just kind of stay here in this city and chill? It's a fun thing for our characters to process as they get older.
I think it's such an interesting development in this book, because I feel like in the Percy Jackson books first time out, it was kind of more of a demigods don't actually grow up that often vibe, so they don't really have to plan futures, and having this sort of fantasy of him and Annabeth hanging out and having a nice, relatively peaceful life is a sort of interesting thing to be dangled as a possibility at this point.
Right. I also think it can be a fun metaphor for kids reading these books of how it can be scary to go out into the world, whether that's after high school and you're going to a college in a town that isn't near you, or after graduating college, going out into the world and moving around and meeting new people. It can be a nice little allegory for like, yes, you can have a nice life staying in the town you grew up in. There's nothing wrong with that if that's your kind of vibe. Or if you want to test those waters and explore and try out new adventures, which I would recommend to people, because I think just getting out and traveling and learning more about the world and other people is awesome. But, to each their own. But it at least brings this sort of metaphor in for kids reading. Like, you can have this sort of life and you can have this other sort of life. And I'm intrigued to see, as the people in these books get older, like, is this going to come up in Trials of Apollo? Like, is this going to be some sort of thing where if Percy and Annabeth are trying to figure out what to do, like, or does one of them want to settle down?
Interesting.
So Hazel adds that 200 to 300 people live here and serve as advisors and army reserves if need be, but mostly they just live their lives. Now, of course, Percy wonders about a future here with Annabeth, a child included, but he snaps out of it because he knows this place isn't where he truly belongs. He's also worried about the impending attack that Juno mentioned, especially he is worried that Gia will be involved in this. He thinks of Mars's warning that failing the quest means the camp will be destroyed, and then he dreads what would happen to all these lovely people at camp. Narrator Percy ends this chapter by saying, quote, "The senators made their way to a big white domed building on the west end of the forum. Percy paused at the doorway, trying not to think about Julius Caesar getting slashed to death at a Senate meeting. Then he took a deep breath and followed Hazel and Frank inside. So here we go." I've retitled chapter 13, Riptide Doesn't Clear Security. Do you have a retitle?
Nice. I like that very much. I said, I push my luck with the god of boundaries.
Oh, fun. Yeah, it's a very fun one
I
that
like
I
the
think Percy
Riptide
would do. So we're going to take our break here for the Son of Fortune, and then we will return to get into chapter 14. Hello and welcome to the Son of Fortune from arguably the most ridiculous location I will ever do a mid-roll break from ever. Yes, I'm coming to you from the bathroom on an airplane. Long story short, I have a quite long flight that I'm on, and also that quite long flight was delayed by many hours because of some snow in New York City. So I'm trying to finish up the episode on the plane because now I'm going to land really late at night and I want to get the episode out and get to bed at a reasonable hour. So I'm trying to have it all done by the time I land. In order to do that, I got to record the mid-roll break here and then put it all in the episode and then be good to go. So I'm going to be super duper quick here. I first just want to remind everyone that we've got 3 live shows coming up in February. Got the one in Hartford, Connecticut is coming up soonest. We're going to be covering chapters 29 and 30 of The Son of Neptune with Emily and Phoebe from Monster Donuts. That's going to be super fun. You can get your tickets at that show and all the other shows we've got going on at thenewsolympian.com/live. And the other thing that I would like to do on here is thank the folks who have joined the Patreon most recently. Got a lot of fun stuff going on the Patreon, been posting some more bonus content, getting back into the swing of things, sending out a whole bunch of stickers and pins and all of that. But I've got to give a shout out to the folks who have joined our Patreon most recently. So shout out to our new Super God tier patron, Grace Sisma. Shout out to our newest God tier patron, David Horton. And shout out to our newest Demigod tier patrons, Ben Boudreau, Taylor Smith, just another PJO fan, Mads, and Trevor.
Thank you all so much for support. May Hermes bless you that if you ever have to be productive in an airport bathroom, you can do it and no one catches you and is confused by the fact that it sounds like you're on the phone in your airport bath. But yes, if you are all caught up on the news Olympian and you're looking for some new content to consume, listen to one of the other podcasts I make. And now, unless you're listening on Patreon where you get access to ad-free episodes, you're going to hear words from sponsors making it feasible for me to be a full-time podcaster. Some of those ads will be earned by me, such as by our sponsor, who you'll hear a decent amount in 2025, Pretty Litter. They do fantastic cat litter and cat toys. Some of them won't be read by me. Those are inserted locally. I did confirm with my ad people that we did get the gambling blocker switched on. For whatever reason, it wasn't one of the block categories, so that has finally been blocked. So I think all the sketchy stuff is now officially blocked. But if you're listening on Patreon, you don't hear any of those inserted ads anyway. But if you aren't, you might hear them in your country's native language. If you're in England, you might hear ads with an English accent in English. But once that's complete, we'll get back into this episode of News Olympian.
And we're back. We're here at chapter 14, which is also called Percy, but we will retitle it. It opens with, quote, "The Senate House interior looked like a high school lecture hall." And I think we found the least exciting opening line of a Heroes of Olympus chapter.
So many good opening lines, but yeah.
And then, well, I get what they're doing, and this is exactly where it picked up, but like, nothing fun, no little joke at all, we're just straight to business, fine. Now, it does paint the visual, because I could exactly see, like, I could see very clear in my mind the semicircle, two-tiered sort of thing. And narrative Percy lets us know that one seat has a small velvet package on it. And don't worry about Chekhov's package. It will be addressed later. The campers take the front row of the semicircle. Veterans and folks from the town and ghosts take the top row. And then we get this description, quote, "Octavian stood in front with a knife and a beanie baby lion, just in case anyone needed to consult the god of cutesy collectibles." And I love that Percy instantly hates this guy, as he well should.
Absolutely. I think he's such a good baddie, antagonist, whatever he is. I hate him. I hate him so much with his beanie babies.
Yes, he is perfectly written by Rick Riordan just to be supremely hateable. I think Rick is very good at making you instantly like people we're supposed to like and instantly hate people you're supposed to hate. And I despise this guy. I hate this guy more than Luke. Like, he sucks so much.
Coming from
like,
you,
obviously Luke did some terrible things trying to take over the world and stuff. And I hate Luke, and all my homies say Luke. But at least Luke, like, kind of had a point with his stuff. Like, he at least had some okay ideas. This dude just sucks. Like, I'm sure we'll learn his motivations later, but it seems like his motivations is, I'm a terrible person and I would love to abuse power for selfish means. And that's really all it seems like. We'll get on, but this chapter, if you didn't hate Octavian going into this chapter, the goal of chapter 14 is you should hate this guy, is basically what Rick is doing. So Reyna gets up and says that this is an emergency meeting, and because it is, they're not going to insist on formalities, and this causes a ghost to yell, "I love formalities!" And
this guy,
this
so
guy,
good.
so good. She stares him down, superb. She explains that they aren't here to debate the quest, nor Frank's choice of champions. And this is again where I wrote my notes in all caps. Has he officially picked Hazel yet, or is it just understood? I feel like I'm losing my mind.
Yeah, it seems like they've all just moved on, and we're there.
We're just rolling with it. Hank, our guy who has canonically cool shoes, is miffed that all three people going on the quest are from cohort 5, says it's not fair. Then the guy next to him says that it's not a good idea because the 5th cohort sucks and they'll screw it up. And then narrator Percy describes an awesome situation. Quote, "Dakota got up so fast, he spilled Kool-Aid from his flask. Quote, we were plenty good last night when we whipped your podex, Larry." Now, this is great on multiple fronts. One, I love trash talk to defend someone's honor. Like, this is something I would definitely do. It's something I did very recently at the Yankees game. So I went to the Yankees played in the World Series. We tragically lost. No one talked to me about it for a million years. But at one of the games at game 5 that I was at, there was a situation where our pitcher was pitching in a high stress situation and there was this batter up. I said something effective like, just like, "Come on, strike him out, strike him out." And the guy in front of me, who was a Yankee fan, said that the batter on the other team, he said, "Oh, this guy's due." And I was like, why are you trying to say, which means like he's due for a hit. He's due to do something because he had been performing poorly. And I'm sitting here thinking like, why are you saying anything good or positive about someone on the other team, implying that our pitcher is not going to strike him out? So then our pitcher did strike him out. So I leaned up and in that guy's ear, I said, "Dude, get out. Let's go." Because like, why are you putting any negative energy towards our team? What are you doing? We're all rooting for the Yankees to win. So I really appreciate this sort of trash talk, but I also appreciate that he said whipped your podex because podex is the Latin word for butt. Oh, it's so good.
I actually did take Latin in senior school, but I had never come across this and I had to look it up, and it was great, the definition.
I will be fully honest. I also did not know this one. I did know from taking Latin in high school some of the other words for like naughty words, like that gladium can also mean something else, and the word for sheath. Like I knew that kind of stuff, and we would make those jokes in high school and stuff, but we never knew podex, and I did have to look it up. It's either the butt or other parts near the butt, so it's a booty-related Latin word, and that just made me very happy. And it's just so fun that like my entire career had been coming to this moment where after years and years of saying I took Latin in high school, we're finally getting to chapters where Latin is relevant and we're all learning the Latin word for butt. And it's just perfect. It's just perfect. Destiny, really, when you think about it.
On your podex.
On your podex. Reyna calms Dakota down and says that they should leave Larry's podex out of this. Great. Like, Reyna doing stuff like this, it's like, okay, so she's kind of funny. Like, yes, she's straight-laced, but
she's cool.
She's got a little bit of a sense of humor. I like it. I like it.
I think she's cool.
I'm a big fan, yes, especially by the end of this chapter. I really like Reyna. She says that Frank has the right to choose his companions as quest leader, and he has chosen Hazel and Percy. And I wrote in my notes, has he?
Apparently.
Now, a ghost challenges this, since Frank is only a probatio, and quests must be led by a centurion-ranked person or higher. And Reyna silences this ghost named Cato and says in order to obey the wishes of Mars Ultor, they must make some adjustments. Like, Reyna's great.
She's adapting.
Reyna? She is.
Great.
Like, she is someone who understands that she's like gotta run the ship, but she also understands that you gotta navigate the waves of the ship and you gotta roll with the punches. And I think that's good.
Yeah.
She claps her hands, and then Octavian comes forward. He puts down his knife and grabs the velvet package from the chair. He calls Frank forward and bestows upon him the mural crown. And I wrote, oh, right, the mural crown. It's a badge shaped like a laurel wreath. And I know that they told us that it was a medal, but I was still imagining it being a literal crown that he would put on his head.
I was too, for some reason. Crown. It just does that, doesn't it? You just get the image instantly.
Yeah, but no. They even told us it was a medal, but I was like, no, it's a crown. It's a crown. Then, surprisingly, he promotes Frank to Centurion, and he, Octavian, says that it was the request of Reyna. So I'm glad that Reyna did this. Now, another badge comes along with this. It's a bronze crescent, and I know that this is probably just like the shape crescent, but I am imagining the food croissant. Like, I'm imagining that it is a bronze croissant badge. I think that's very funny, and it makes me want to make like a T&O pin of like a bronze croissant for being a centurion. But he's got this badge now. People are very upset at this. And you hear people yelling from the crowd, he's still a probie! Impossible! And then third person goes, water cannon up my nose!
Yes!
Which, so glad that water cannon up my nose guy made it to the meeting.
Still
but
there.
Be still my improv comedy heart. Uncle Rick with a callback in the rule of threes. Oh,
so
Rick!
good.
So good. Octavian silences the crowd and defends Reyna's choice because if the rules state that a quest leader must be at least a centurion or higher, and Mars said that Frank must lead the quest, then Frank has to be a centurion. And this felt very much like when I did geometry proofs. I don't know if you guys do this in maths class
Thank
over
you.
there.
I appreciate that very much.
I didn't want you to be confused. But when we have geometry class, there's a whole thing of proofs where you prove things like the transitive property or things like that, where you just like kind of have, it's basically like turning down like, well, if A equals this and B equals that, blah, 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 thus, you know, this. And then I think we would even write QED afterwards.
Would you really?
Or something.
We did not write QED.
It was hard because I didn't take straight up geometry my freshman year. I did like a hybrid thing where the first semester was algebra and then the second semester was geometry. So they like really condensed it. And I feel like we did proofs, but it wasn't like as much as some of the classes who did like just geometry for the full year. My high school goofed and they didn't place me in like the highest level math course. And I like blew that math course out of the water.
I bet.
And then they put me up to the right thing my sophomore year going forward.
I am wildly out of my depth, having dropped maths at 14.
Okay, well,
yeah.
Some people will understand what I'm talking about. But don't worry, I love math. I'm not all out here doing geometry on a daily basis. But, you know, what are you going to do? Narrator Percy then says, quote, "Suddenly Percy understood what an effective speaker Octavian was. He sounded reasonable and supportive, but his expression was pained. He carefully crafted his words to put all the responsibility on Reyna. This was her idea, he seemed to say. If it went wrong, Reyna was to blame. If only Octavian had been the one in charge, things would have been done more sensibly. But alas, he had no choice but to support Reyna, because Octavian was a loyal Roman soldier." And I wrote in my notes, this guy is dangerous. This is someone you don't want to mess with. And the next line in the book is, quote, "For the first time, Percy realized this scrawny, funny-looking scarecrow of a kid might be a dangerous enemy." And this keeps happening where my thoughts line up exactly with the narrators. But yeah, I think this is really well written by Rick. It clearly paints the message of the type of person this guy is. And I'm glad that Percy recognizes that this is someone who's very dangerous because of his oration skills.
Yeah, he's not just malicious, he's super sneaky. And it is encouraging that Percy at least knows that that's what we're up against.
Right. And it's a sneaky thing where, Percy is very perceptive and he can see this, but other people might get fooled.
Yeah.
Other people might not know what's going on. And that's really dangerous when you can't just say, like, obviously this is lying. Like, you obviously there is something more nefarious afoot. And maybe I'm feeling this because we're recording this on November 1st and our election over here is coming soon. And we certainly have politicians that like to do these sorts of things and they trick, unfortunately, high numbers of people. I am nervous as hell.
Yeah, it's so soon, Mike. It's so soon.
It's so soon. And this episode comes out afterwards.
I know.
So, I don't know. It's either a relief or maybe podcasts are illegal now. Because as much as one party loves to say they're all pro free speech, they love trying to shut down stuff. We'll see how that goes. Future Mike doing the production work on this. Maybe you're like, ha ha ha, yay. And also maybe you're like, oh no. Maybe you've already moved to Finland. Wouldn't be lying if I said Kelly and I have looked into New Zealand immigration policies.
Interesting. Well, I got everything crossed for you guys.
Anyway, Percy Jackson. Now, Reyna picks up on this crap from Octavian too, and she is visibly upset in the face. So thankfully, she understands that this guy sucks. She goes on to explain that there is an opening for Centurion, quote, "as one of our officers, also a senator, has decided to step down." Now, here's my question. They're using a lot of these words that feel a little bit interchangeable, such as centurion, officer, and senator. Now, I'm very confused about what the difference is here, but Beth, you're from the UK. Is this like England, Great Britain, and the UK, where they all sound similar, but they're not all the same? What's going on here?
What's going on here? I don't know. I feel like the centurions seem to be like each of the houses. They don't call them houses.
The cohorts.
Right. The cohorts each have 2 centurions. And I think in the real Romanness of it all, a centurion would be in charge of 100 people, right? But it's different at the camp because the houses aren't divided into hundreds, they're divided into smaller numbers and so on. And then we've got the Senate made up of senators, and I think they are 10 people who I don't know if they get to be centurions as well. I feel like they are very different things, but I don't know if at camp they are able to hold both offices.
Yeah, okay, so I've just tried to Google it on the Riordan wiki, and I'm trying to not look very far at things, but it just does say, like, from the little description, and I'm not going to click it because I'm afraid I'll like open the actual page and then it'll be like, oh, when Grover dies,
Yeah, you
so
don't want that.
This says that a centurion is a professional officer in the Roman army. They are the Roman equivalent of head counselors at Camp Half-Blood and are able to act as senators. Centurion and officer feel very similar. I guess a senator would just be anyone who's accepted at the Senate meeting. So I guess like the ghosts would be a senator, but not necessarily a centurion. I don't know how you would be an officer, but not a centurion. Those feel like those might be interchangeable unless like there is an officer type position before you are upgraded to centurion. But if I had to guess, I think centurion would be the highest one. Like a centurion is the highest of the officers, and then a senator is just anyone who is at these Senate meetings.
Yes, I think you're right that maybe there is an in-between level because they're saying it's strange for Frank to have gone from basically nothing to centurion, implying that you usually rise up through something else.
Yeah, so I guess I would need an example of someone at the camp who is an officer but not a centurion.
Yeah.
And the more we say the word centurion, I don't know if I'm supposed to say centurion or like centurion. Like, it's always hard with how much do you the T in centurion and centurion. This is one of those words like zone, where if you say it a lot, it just sounds like it doesn't exist anymore.
Oh no, I'm going centurion, but I don't know.
I feel like in British English, you do more of the like ch for T's, don't you? I'm trying to think of another example of this. Oh, like Tuesday. Don't you guys say like Chewsday?
Yeah, and I find it really weird that you say Tuesday. And when I narrate audiobooks, I am told to say Zeus.
Oh, we don't go that proper. That's like very proper. We go more of like Zeus, like it's Z-O-O-S.
I honestly prefer
that.
Zeus sounds a bit ridiculous.
It's like Dr. Seuss, but with a Z. Like that's kind of how we more say it. Like no one calls it like, yes, the places you will go by Dr. Seuss. But yeah, I guess you guys would say like Chewsday and then tube instead of Tuesday and the tube.
Tunes. Yeah.
Oh, tunes? Like
yeah,
cartoons?
What a tune.
Oh, like musical tunes?
Oh, you mean tunes.
Oh, wait. Okay, wait. What are you saying? Like tunes? What's a tune?
Well, a song, a tune.
Oh, okay. But we would, but we would say tune. Oh, gosh.
Oh. Would you?
I would say like a tune. We don't really throw the CH instead of a T. I also, what's the thing? You guys throw like Fs instead of THs, right? Like it'll be, I'm trying to think like,
I do not know if we do
example
that.
of like, oh God.
This is becoming Beth and Mike's international nightmare.
I know. I could do this for years. If I think of one, I'll say it, but I feel like there's a thing where you'll like say Fs in words that actually have THs instead of them.
There are some UK accents that don't really have TH. My partner David famously can't really say THs, so even Beth becomes Beth.
Oh, Beth. Okay, got it. I'm looking for an example. It's literally your name. So yeah, like they'd be like, oh, Beth. Yeah.
But I can. Many people can say it.
You can, because of your name. You can,
but not everyone. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, this has been Language Tangent Town with Mike and Beth. But anyway, Percy Jackson. So Reyna reveals that this is Gwen who is stepping down. Gwen is going to retire into the city and attend college after 10 years of service in the Legion. And Percy, and I as well, just can't blame her for this. Totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Reyna says that she has the right to replace officers as praetor. And while she realizes that a probatio making the jump up to centurion is unusual, yesterday was also pretty unusual, which is a very good point from Reyna. She asks for Frank's ID. He gives his probatio necklace over to Octavian, who asks for his arm. He raises Frank's arm up to the sky and says, "We accept Frank Zhang, son of Mars, to the 12th Legion Fulminata for his first year of service. Do you pledge your life to the Senate and people of Rome?" And Frank tries to say, "I do," but he stumbles over his words and has a bit of a frog in his throat. And he says something that sounds like a dud until he clears his throat and repeats it. Great. I relate very hard to this.
Excellent answer.
All you have to do is say 2 words and you mess him up.
I love Frank so much. He's great.
I'm big fan. The senators then chant SPQR, fire blazes his arm, and Frank gives a look of fear, but then his new tattoo shows up and it says SPQR. It's got an image of crossed spears and 1 stripe. Octavian says that Frank can sit down, and he gives another "this wasn't my call" look to the crowd. And I especially don't like Octavian because Octavian would be me if I were a piece of crap, because I can 1,000% do these sorts of things. And if I'm in a situation where I'm upset or grumpy, like I will do these sorts of things where like I have a very expressive face, so I can very much say one thing and say another with my face, whether it's using tones, I can use that. Like if I was a terrible person, I would be Octavian. So I especially hate him because I could see myself becoming this if I was not good and wasn't raised properly.
Octavian is like Mike as Slytherin.
Yeah, yes. Like this is Dark Mike is Octavian.
You have to use your powers for good.
I will. I promise. I'll use it for talking about podcasts and stuff, not for telling people one thing and meaning another. But I think that's especially why I don't like this guy, because I can kind of see myself falling into this if I was mean. Now, once Frank sits next to Percy, Percy immediately asks, "Did it hurt?" Classic Percy. Love this. But also, maybe this is just because I'm 32, but when someone asks, "Did it hurt?" my brain immediately wants to go, "When you fell from heaven."
Oh, wow.
Just the terrible, gross pickup line. Oy.
The old ones are the old ones.
But he was talking about the tattoo. Frank says, "Yeah, it hurt a ton," which I think is great.
I love that.
Frank doesn't know what to do with the medals, so Hazel, whose eyes are shining with pride, pins them to his shirt. So cute, so adorable. Mm-hmm. And narrator Percy then says, quote, "Percy smiled. He'd only known Frank for a day, but he felt proud of him too. Quote, 'You deserve it, man,' he said. 'What you did last night? Natural leadership.' And I like this. I like Percy and Frank's friendship a lot. I think it's great."
Yeah, they're awesome.
Frank says that becoming a centurion is just a step too far. And then we learn, as they're talking, that the meeting kept going and they weren't paying attention. Octavian hits him with a Centurion Zhang, did you hear the question? Which is eye-roll inducing and also terror-inducing. This is my biggest fear. Just makes me have flashbacks to school when you weren't paying attention to an important meeting. Just gross. Oy. This was making me squirm all about.
Oh, really? I imagine you could always talk your way out of those situations.
I feel like I could, but like when I was in school, I don't know. I love to like talk to people in class and stuff, especially making like tiny little jokes. And just whenever I got caught doing it, it just made me so nervous because, I just want to be a good little rule follower boy, but I also want to make a snarky little joke to my friend sitting next to me. So this one just like really hit me hard.
Yeah, I would have hated that too. I was so lawful at school, so didn't want to be caught out.
No, not at all. Frank obviously has no idea what's going on, and then Octavian gives a look of, see, told ya, to the crowd before repeating in an incredibly condescending tone, like he's speaking to a 3-year-old, asking if Frank has a plan for the quest or if he even knows where they're going. And Frank goes, meaning he doesn't, but then Hazel steps in to back him up and says, weren't you listening last night, Octavian? Mars was pretty clear. We're going to the land beyond the gods, Alaska. So thank goodness for Hazel. Great stuff from her. The senators are nervous, some of the ghosts vanish, the metal dogs whimper, and then we learn that Senator Larry, which is just a fun name of like, yes, it's me, Senator Larry.
It really is.
So Senator Larry stands up and says that he knows this is Mars's order, but it's a terrible idea because Alaska is cursed and swarming with monsters since it's out of the gods' control. He reminds the crowd that no demigod has come back alive since, and then Percy jumps in to say, since you lost your eagle. And then narrator Percy says, Larry was so startled, he fell back on his podex.
Yes.
Rick Riordan. Rule of threes, third butt joke, making sure that all the readers know that there is a butt joke. Yes.
Uncle Rick is so on form. So on form.
From a comedic perspective, Rick is just killing it. I'm loving it. Percy then continues, look, I know I'm new here. I know you guys don't like to mention that massacre in the 1980s. And then someone goes, he mentioned it, which that's got to be the I love formalities thing, right?
Right. I mean, just mention the big massacre, but it is so funny, this guy just being like, he mentioned it. I love it.
So fun. Just really, really good. Percy just continues, but don't you get it? The 5th cohort led that expedition. We failed, and I love that Percy says we. Like he's been on the team for a day, and he's already saying we. Great. We failed, and we have to be responsible for making things right. That's why Mars is sending us. This giant, the son of Gaia, he's the one who defeated your forces 30 years ago. I'm sure of it. Now he's sitting up there in Alaska with a chained death god and all your old equipment. He's mustering his armies and sending them south to attack this camp. So, Percy, doing a good job.
Absolutely. He's getting people on side. He's using we. He has oratory skills, and I love that.
He does. Octavian accuses Percy of knowing too much about the enemy's plans, and it is so antithetical to who Percy is to be accused of being a spy, basically, that he almost doesn't know how to handle this insult. He wants to rage on Octavian, but he recognizes that this is bait, and he instead takes a deep breath and calmly states that they are going to travel to Alaska, confront the son of Gaia, and bring back the eagle and unchain Thanatos. And I am so proud of Percy Jackson for not taking the bait. And this is something I can totally relate to. The times that I get the most upset are when people accuse me of something that is just so untrue to who I am as a person. So similar thing, like if someone accused me of being unloyal or someone accused me of doing something like trying to be nefarious and all, like that's when I get the most upset. And I can completely relate to Percy here.
Yeah, it's just so far away, but I'm very proud that he doesn't rise to it.
Very mature of him. Now, he checks with Hazel that the name Thanatos was correct, and Hazel says that's the Greek name. The Roman name is Letus, but when it comes to death, they're fine with him being Greek, which I think is funny. Like, we're not even going to translate that. We're going to leave him as Thanatos. Octavian doesn't believe that they can complete this quest before the Feast of Fortuna on the 24th, since it's already the 20th. And have you never read a Percy Jackson book, my guy? This is a perfect timeline. We're going to be just fine. We're going to be just fine. He asks if they even know who this son of Gaia is, and Hazel says that she does, and confirms it is Alcyonius. Narrator Percy says, quote, that name seemed to lower the temperature in the room by 50 degrees. The senators shivered. So I'm thinking, ooh, okay, is this an ice giant? And that's what I was saying before, like metal skin, but seeming like ice guy feels almost like not the perfect fit, but I'm intrigued. It also could just be a figurative chill. It also could be snowy and about because he's in Alaska. It might not be that this guy has ice powers, but I was thinking ice giant initially.
Yeah, I think we're getting a lot of kind of cold and Percy waking up shivering, which is unusual. Whether it's to do with Alaska, something's up.
Exactly. Reyna asks Hazel if she knows this because she's a daughter of Pluto. And then Nico stands up and Percy basically thinks, oh, right, Nico. Yeah, I forgot about that guy. And I was like, yeah, I forgot he was at this meeting too. He very politely asks if he can interject. And he explains that their father taught them a bit about the giants, how each of them was made to oppose a specific Olympian. He says that Porphyrion is the anti-Jupiter and the king of the giants, but Alcyonius is the eldest giant. And he is the anti-Pluto, which makes this all very interesting. And the Thanatos connection is even more interesting now. Reyna doesn't love how familiar he sounds with this giant. Nico continues and explains the god and demigod requirement to defeat them, which we all know. Dakota thinks that this will never happen since he didn't read The Lost Hero. Nico states that it did happen in the First Giant War. He worries that it might not be able to happen again, though, with Alcyonius because he was impossible to kill as long as he stayed in the place that he was born. And Nico's worried that if he was reborn in Alaska, and then Hazel finishes, quote, then he can't be defeated there, ever, by any means, which is why our 1980s expedition was doomed to fail. There's also just a fun note. It's the first time I've ever seen 1980s written out in words because it was like 19-80s as opposed to 1980s. And I thought that was just a fun. I don't think I've ever seen a decade written out in full word form before. So I just thought it was interesting.
So in my copy, it's not like that. It's like the way you'd expect it.
It's 1980 with a little S.
Absolutely. In my horrendous version.
Oh, you've got the English. Is the cover a spoiler? Should I not see it?
I mean, I think it's fine, especially if I
I like you're covering whatever's at the top, but okay. Yeah, interesting. It says this is the stuff of legends. Does it say half boy, half god, all hero? I guess not, because it's not
that
Percy
was
Jackson.
On the previous series.
So is the Heroes of Olympus one, this is the stuff of legends? Is that on every book? Because that's kind of rough.
I think so. It's a Guardian quote, but it just seems so random and vague. I kind of hate it.
Oh, man. Oh, I haven't done it yet. I should do it soon. Normally I do like the Patreon bonus episodes where I like look at all of the covers and stuff. So I've not delved into what do the British covers of the Heroes of Olympus books look like. And they were bad with Percy Jackson. I wonder if they are. By the time this episode comes out, I probably will have done a bonus episode on The Lost Heroes. But oh my good golly gosh. Wow. That's
yeah. That bad.
But the new international covers are really cool though. Like they've been redoing the covers for the Percy Jackson books, and the new ones slap, like that purple and lime green Lightning Thief. Oh,
I recently just saw that, and I bulk bought these, and then I was like, oh, but they're pretty ones,
right? And I've never been like a buy a book because the cover of it is pretty guy, but those books made me second guess it. I wonder if they'll make like poster versions of those covers, because then I would get those and put them up in the studio, and I think that could be really, really fun.
Yeah, they're really nice.
Yeah. Anyway, this Percy Jackson. So we get more unrest from the crowd. We get, the quest is impossible. We're doomed. And then more Kool-Aid. Smart. Zag on him. Can't do water cannon for a third time. You gotta make it unsuspecting. So perfect. God, it feels like Rick took an improv 101 class. Like, it's just the fundamentals of comedy in these two chapters. I was so excited as a comedy nerd.
I also love that we've got a ghost saying, we're doomed. It's like, what can happen to you? You're already dead.
That's a really good point. Reyna silences the crowd and says that if Mars gave the quest, then it is feasible. She says that this team must go to save Thanatos, and if they get the Eagle too, awesome. She says that now the only other thing that they can do at this point is give them advice and ensure they have a plan. And then she asks Percy, you do have a plan? And Percy thinks about how he wants to proudly step forth and say, no, I do not. But he sees the look of fear in the crowd's faces, so he doesn't do that. Instead, he says, first I got to understand something. He turns to Nico and says that he's confused because he thought Pluto was the god of death, not Thanatos. And since I've played Hades the video game, I am a master here, and I know that this is a trope that people make the confusion with all the time, so much so that they make fun of it in Hades the video game. And Nico explains that Pluto is the god of the underworld, not death. Thanatos is the god of death, like Pluto's lieutenant. He makes sure that souls go to the afterlife and that they stay there. And then he continues by saying, quote, he's like, well, imagine life and death are two different countries. Everybody would like to be in life, right? So there's a guarded border to keep people from crossing back over without permission. But it's a big border with lots of holes in the fence. Pluto tries to seal up the breaches, but new ones keep popping up all the time. That's why he depends on Thanatos, who's like the border patrol, the police. You had me until the end there. You had me until the end. And I know that in 2012 or whenever this book was written, it was a different time, but now Border Patrol and police very coded to be different. I'm going to just ignore this and continue to envision Thanatos as the moody, extremely attractive punk emo boy from Hades the video game.
Yeah,
yes, exactly. Did you also play Hades the video game?
Yes, I haven't played Hades the video game 2, which I think
will
you
say
have.
nothing about it. I have. It's very good.
Can't get it yet, but I love Hades the video game, and we've got a couple of Hades the video game characters right on this page.
Do you mean you can't get it yet, like physically, or just like you're not in a point where you can play? Because it is available on Mac now, if that was your limiting factor.
Oh, I'm kind of a Switch person. I don't...
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not on console yet. Yeah, because it's still in early access. Okay. Gotcha.
I'm excited, though.
It's good. I won't say spoiler stuff about it, but they just did a new update and it's very good. But yeah, I'm glad we're both imagining, like, I don't know, when I read books, like, I don't necessarily usually have like very clear images of characters. Like, my characters are usually more of like vague, nondescript, like just kind of like what they're describing. So like when it's like is exactly describe someone's hairstyle, like I will imagine that, but like a face to me is usually more like not necessarily sharply defined. But every time they're saying Thanatos, I'm just imagining the guy from Hades the video game. Like he's clear as he's exact that image chained up. So I think that's a fun like thing going on in my brain when I'm reading these books. So as much of a joke I want to make about like Border Patrol and police, like this does make sense. And Nico does paint a very clear picture here. So I get it. Percy then says, quote, Thanatos catches souls and deports them back to the underworld. And Nico confirms, but says, yeah, he's chained up now. Frank, who has spoken very little for someone who's supposed to be leading this quest, asks, how does one chain up death? And I wrote, ooh, Sisyphus did it. And Nico says that it's been done before, citing Sisyphus. He also says that Hercules wrestled him to the ground, which I don't know if I just didn't know this or if I forgot this. That was news to me.
Sisyphus, of course, we know from Hades, a video game.
And also Percy Jackson.
But
more importantly, Hades, a video game. Percy asks if freeing Thanatos would mean that the dead can stay dead. And then he turns to Gwen and says, no offense. So funny. Oh, that's so good.
Poor Gwen. She's going to be fine. She's going to go to college. It's going to be all right.
She's going to open a bakery. She'll make croissants. It'll be great. They'll look just like the medals. Yeah. Nico says that it's more complicated than that. And then Octavian rolls his eyes. Reyna ignores Octavian being a little jerk and guesses that Nico is referring to the Doors of Death, which is in the prophecy of the Seven, which sparked the failed Alaska expedition. And then Cato, the ghost from before, goes, we all know how that turned out. So good. Kind of like Cato. And then there's lots of ghostly grumbling, but then Nico makes a shush sign, putting his finger over his lips, and they all go silent, but they go silent against their will, like their mouths were glued together.
Nice.
Nico showing a flash of power. Very fun. Very, very fun. Then narrator Percy says, quote, Percy wished he had that power over certain living people, like Octavian, for instance. Very good. Very, very, very good. Nico says that Thanatos is only part of the solution. The other, the Doors of Death, is a concept that even he doesn't fully grasp. He says there's many ways into the underworld, like the River Styx, the Door of Orpheus, and smaller escape routes. He says those smaller escape routes will be easier to use with Thanatos chained up. He says that it sometimes can be good to have someone like Gwen be rebirthed, but more often than not, it will be for evil folks. The Doors of Death are the personal doors of Thanatos, and only he is supposed to know their location, which changes over time. His understanding is that the doors have been forced open and Gia's minions are controlling them. Percy guesses that this means that Gia can control who comes back from the dead, and Nico confirms. And I'm wondering, is Gwen secretly some sort of nefarious choice? Or was this just someone who like slipped through the cracks of Gia and was just done so that we don't have to worry about the death of Gwen, and it's a way for people to learn more about the Doors of Death thing? That's what I'm thinking it is. I'm probably just overthinking it here, but there's now a non-zero chance that Gia was like, Gwen, you will turn over to my side. So Nico says that Gia can pick and choose to let out the biggest and the baddest, and rescuing Thanatos means that he can catch souls and send them back. The monsters will behave as they normally did, and until then, they'll just keep coming back. Frank asks, since Thanatos knows where the doors are, can't he just retake them over once he's freed? And Nico says that he's no match for Gia. Instead, that would require a massive quest and an army of the best demigods, and that sounds like book 5 to me. And I'm wondering, are we really going to save Thanatos in book 2, and then he's just going to like not do anything for 2 books? I don't know. I'm intrigued to see like how he fits into the bigger picture of the whole 5-book series, as opposed to just this individual book. Reyna recounts the foe's bare arm to the Doors of Death line from the prophecy, and Percy can see how shook she is in the face. He wonders if she has seen visions of what would happen to camp if the invasion happened, And Reyna says that if they kick off the ancient prophecy, they don't have the bodies to have an army there and an army protecting camp. So Percy tries to sound as confident as possible to quell the rising tension in the room, and he says that they must free Thanatos first. He recounts that Mars said that only 3 were needed for the quest, so they'll tackle that. The rest can stay back and defend, and the doors of death can be worried about later. Frank says that, yeah, that sounds like enough for 1 week. And then Octavian says, so you do have a plan. And Percy looks at the team and says, we go to Alaska as fast as possible. And then Hazel adds, and we improvise. And Frank concludes, a lot. So pretty good.
And they already are improvising together, so this is very positive.
Yes, it's good. Narrator Percy then says, quote, Reyna studied them. She looked like she was mentally writing her own obituary. Very good. Reyna says it's good enough, and all that's left is voting on what resources to provide. And Octavian interjects here, and Percy mutters, oh, great, here it comes. Fantastic. Octavian says the 2 gods have warned about an attack coming in 4 days, so spreading out the resources is a bad idea. Then he says, which I thought this guy was a jerk, but I didn't know he was going to stoop this low. He says that Mars perhaps chose these 3, the least likely candidates for this quest, because they are expendable, thinking Mars is playing some sort of long game. He says they should keep the resources at camp because that's where the battle will be won or lost. He basically says that their quest is just an added bonus. If it works, cool, but really we got to defend the camp here. And at this point, I'm just thinking, the 3 of them have become a very convincing, no one believed in us and no one liked us and the cards are stacked against us case. I'd said earlier that it didn't really feel believable that Percy was unliked at camp just from like jealousy and stuff, but like it does genuinely feel like for lots of different reasons, people don't like these 3 and they don't like what's happening with the quest and they're not confident in it. And I feel like it's very convincing. But man, Octavian, what a jerk.
Yeah, it's so horrible.
Don't like him at all. Really not a fan, but that means he's a perfectly crafted villain. So Frank then gets up to fight Octavian, but Percy stops him and just yells, fine, no problem, and says that all they really need is transportation and something that won't travel by land. And yeah, we got to get in the water, baby. Come on, let's get in that water. Octavian scoffs, would you like us to charter an airplane? And I wrote, no, he hates the sky. And then Percy says, no, air travel. I have a feeling that would be bad too, but a boat. Can you at least give us a boat? And then Hazel moans and Percy looks at her, but then she mouths, fine, I'm fine. So we'll learn about this in a couple of chapters. And then Octavian says, a boat! The son of Neptune wants a boat. Sea travel has never been the Roman way, but he isn't much of a Roman. And Reyna kind of puts him in his place a little bit, saying that Percy's not asking for much and giving them nothing is very, but then Octavian interrupts to say traditional, says that they should see if these 3 can survive without any help like true Romans. This guy is really like ramping up the suck factor a lot.
He really sucks. Luckily, Reyna is there to rein him in a little bit.
Well done. The crowd grows restless. Reyna says that they'll put it to a vote. Quote, Senators, the motion is as follows. The quest shall go to Alaska. The Senate shall provide full access to the Roman Navy docked at Alameda. No other aid will be forthcoming. The 3 adventurers will survive or fail on their own merits, all in favor. And thank goodness every senator votes yes. So the motion passes. Reyna excuses the team since the Senate has other matters to discuss, but then asks Octavian for a word. And I was thinking, ooh, is she going to yell at him? But no, something else happens. Percy is very excited to leave the room and get some fresh air. Hazel goes, so we're pretty much toast? And Frank says that he wouldn't fault them for backing out now, but Hazel replies, are you kidding? And pull sentry duty for the rest of the week? Which is great and cute and adorable. Frank smiles, then turns to Percy. Percy thinks about the dreams telling him to stay, but then he imagines Gia saying that he's screwed either way. So then narrator Percy says, quote, Percy made a silent vow. After the Feast of Fortuna, he would find Annabeth, but for now, he had to act. He couldn't let Gia win. And I love him. I knew he was going to do this, but I love him for doing it. He's a true hero through and through, and he can't just let it go. It's like me playing an RPG. I got to do all the side quests. I have to help everyone, even if it's like, oh, my cat's in a tree. It's like, I will find your cat, and I will save it. Like, I love that he is not taking the selfish approach. He's going to help the team and try to save the camp.
Yeah, he's such a team player. I really think they're a very strong 3 already. It's great.
They are. I feel really great about this 3. Percy says that he's in and adds that seeing the Roman Navy will be a cool bonus. And then Octavian calls after them and jogs to catch up. Percy goes, what do you want? And Octavian smiles and says, already decided I'm your enemy? Yes, it's quite clear. It is quite clear. Frank calls him a backstabbing, and I thought he was going to say backstabbing, mob-flipping cockroach, one of my favorite lines from Tony Hawk's Underground. But instead, he calls him a backstabbing slimy, but then Percy and Hazel hold him back, very NBA fight-esque. And Octavian Octavian says that this is unfitting behavior of a centurion, which, okay, just a big fart noise over here. Like, what? He sucks. And he explains that he is here because Reyna has a message for Percy. He wants him to meet her in the Principia without his, quote, lackeys here. Gross, disgusting, so rude. He says that she'll meet him there after the Senate meeting, so this is going to be what the next 2 chapters are, I'm guessing. Percy asks what this is all about. Octavian says he doesn't know. Quote, the last person she had a private talk with was Jason Grace, and that was the last time I ever saw him. Good luck and goodbye, Percy Jackson. He sucks so much. I love it. I love how much he sucks. He's perfectly hateable. He's very much like... who's the freaking guy that you fight with the bull in Hades, the video game? Theseus.
Theseus,
right?
Yeah, with the constant taunting. And you really like the Minotaur because he seems like a decent guy. And there's just this jerk.
He's so perfectly hateable. Octavian is so deliciously hateable. He's perfectly crafted. I love how much I hate him. And that is the end of chapter 14, which I have retitled, We Win an Election.
Very good.
Again, maybe inspired by the current events going on. But I just thought that was a good misdirect of what was going on. Do you have a retitling of chapter 14?
I went for the Senate condemn us to almost certain death.
Oh, that's very fun. That's good, especially because the ending of Frank's last chapter was that he was given a death sentence.
Yeah.
So to play up on that is very, very fun. Cool. Well, that's the end of this chapter. It's the end of this episode. Beth, thank you so much for joining and making your TNO debut. I'm sure the first of many episodes with you. This was very, very fun.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Of course. If people want to find you doing stuff, where can they find you doing stuff? You're doing so much stuff.
You can find me most places, Beth Eyre, EYRE, on Twitter and Instagram, and maybe one day TikTok if I get my act together.
Don't do it. You don't have to do it.
No, it's terrifying. I don't. But the reason I thought I should join is because you could follow the Tiny Angry Witch, who has videos on Instagram and YouTube and TikTok a little bit. It's a stop motion project about a tiny angry witch, and there will be at least several videos by the time this comes out. And also you can find me playing D&D at 20 to midnight on Twitch and on YouTube with Mike Schubert and with Gabriel Urbina and Emma Jarko, 2 other awesome people. We play alternate Wednesdays, and there's a whole load of wonderful backstory to check out.
Yes, you can watch all the old streams on YouTube. You can watch the current stuff on Twitch. It's very fun, and I look forward to whenever I can get back. I've basically taken a hi, I'm a dad break, but I'm hoping to return one day soon. Maybe by the time this episode is out, who knows? But regardless, Beth, this was an absolute delight. I'm so stoked to have you on the show. Thank you for being on, and listeners, thank you for listening. And until next time, as we figure out what this fancy special meeting with Percy and Reyna is, until then, I'll Percy you later. Hey, thanks so much for listening to this episode of The Newest Olympian. This podcast is created, hosted, and produced by me, Mike Schubert. I also run the social media and the website. Our editor is Sherry Guo. The music is by Bettina Campamontes and Brandon Grugel, and the art is by Jessica E. Boyd. If you love the podcast and you just can't get enough, there's a couple of different things you can do. First, you can go to thenewestolympian.com/Patreon. You can join the Patreon, and you can get access to a whole bunch of fun bonus content. You can also follow us on social media. We're at Newest Olympian on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. There's also a subreddit, reddit.com/r/thenewestolympian. And there's also the TNO Discord, which you get access to by joining any TNO tier on the Patreon. You can learn all about the show at thenewestolympian.com, and you can get some sweet TNO merch at thenewestolympian.com/merch. I've mentioned the Patreon, so let's give a shout out to our producer level patrons: Kelsey Gillespie, The Damn Steam Nuggets, Vicky Garcia, Frida Vikstrom, Megan Moon, Sabrina Balsiger, Polly Burge, Nikki Harris, Tatiana Schmidt, Sandra Rose, Josh Sayer, Josh Wilkie, Abby Ryan, Marco Redhouse, Sam Reeby, Mrs. O'Leary, Milo Kim, Sandkoff, Rika, Ryla Matthews, Sky Mallory, Persasabeth, Aiden Parziani, Grace, Ginger Spurs Boy, A Cup of Solace, Bradimus Prime, Skylar Sisters, Scott Sheldon, Sophie, Natanya Page, Ann M. Thayer Cohen, Bella, Percy Jackson, Han, Haley Hingleheimer Schmidt, Catherine Sloan, Jessica Phillips, Haley Mary, Jim Jam Koopy, Kit Kat Crumbs, Andrea, not Andrea, and Jordan Ray. If you want to support the show in a non-monetary way, just tell someone about the podcast. It really does help a lot, whether that is you reaching out to someone directly who you think might enjoy the podcast. Maybe they're a big Percy Jackson fan. Maybe they've been looking for an excuse to read the books. Or if you post about the show on social media, or you leave us a rating and review on whatever podcasting app you're using. Truly, all of these things help. I really appreciate anyone who has done it in the past, and I also appreciate anyone who will do it in the future.
And I'm just so thankful that you tuned into this episode, and I hope you tune into our next episode. We'll be joined by Stephen Parr live in Philly, and we covered like 3 to 4 chapters. I don't even know. We did a lot. It was a fun time, but that will be the next episode of The Newest Olympian. But until then, I'll see you later. Everyone's going to be ASMR mic, so obviously the ASMR mic segment is going to be me flushing the airport bathroom toilet. So here it is. Thank you so much for listening.